It's a real honor to be with all you. This is another just top-notch hearing, and certainly, you know, we're not the Homeland Security Committee or even Armed Services, and so yes, getting into these points about the entanglements of cybersecurity threats and its realities, of which I'd love to ask you about. I just wanted to start from a more elevated place. And maybe this is a question for Mr. Ray and Mr. Coker. What is the CCP's motivation, as far as you know and can share, with cybersecurity threats and actions? Because we've been hearing colleagues and everyone talking about all these little examples and all the tools and this and that. But what's the goal here? Is it to chip away at our economy? Is it to make us look weak? And in fact, I think even just some of what we're positing today is perpetuating, I think, some of this position of weakness rather than strength, because much of this technology is technology we've created. But that's another point. I'm more interested in the why.
Well, my starting point would be that, as with most questions about the Chinese government's tactics and strategy, when one asks, is it A, B, or C, the answer is usually D, all the above. And in the context of cyber threats, they are using their biggest hacking program in the world to try to steal our intellectual property, to advance their own economic engine. They're trying to steal our personally identifiable information to feed into the influence operations and other tactics that we've talked about here already in this hearing. They're using their cyber targeting to suppress dissidents and critics. And, as is revealed through the operation we've talked about and announced here this morning, they're using their cyber targeting to pre-position on our critical infrastructure to be able, should they so choose, to conduct a destructive or disruptive attack on our critical infrastructure at the time of a conflict. So they're doing all those things. They all feed up ultimately into their goal to supplant the U.S. as the world's greatest superpower.
I'm in agreement in that the goal is to supplant the U.S. We are in a competition with China, and frankly, they're the only nation that has the means to reshape the international order, and means being diplomatic, economic, military. We are in a competition. We have to acknowledge that and will not lose sight of it. We also need to manage that competition responsibly to avoid the confrontation and conflict, and we can do that by continuing to operate with competence, not yielding the initiative, not merely staying on the defensive, but being as strong as the United States has always been. We look at the national security strategy, it says to invest at home to maintain our strength.
So we shouldn't consider cybersecurity attacks warfare. I mean, I know General Nakasone, you're here, and what are they doing over there? I mean, do they have a department that is just focused on cyber attacks? Because this is sort of, in some respects, hard to wrap our heads around, right? I mean, I know, Ray, you've got your whole caboodle that you can talk about and then can't talk about, but I'm just more or less interested in terms of, you know, how are we choosing to respond to these things? What's our perch, and what do we know about how they're actually putting all this stuff together?
Well, we know a lot about what they're doing, as we've talked about today. We also know who's doing it. We know how they're structured. We know their version of the National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command. We also know that they have very, very specific organizations that are targeting different parts of the world, to include the United States of America. And now I think the important thing is, now that we know that, what are we doing about it? And this is to the point of the department's strategy is that we defend forward. We operate outside the United States to be able to impose costs on our adversaries, either by enabling our partners or acting, and that's the important piece.
I am just out of time, but Ms. Easterly, as someone who founded the Women in STEM caucus here, bipartisan caucus in the Congress, it is such a treat to hear your expertise. You've been phenomenal, all of you have. Thank you, and I yield back.